Hello, I am here today to talk about two of my favorite topics, open source and diversity and inclusion. And I promise you, I'm not just saying that because it's literally my job. Speaking of my job, I am the Senior Director for Diversity and Inclusion Strategy at GitHub. I remember when I was going through my interview process, I was meeting with Erica Brusha, who was the COO at the time. And she was explaining to me how GitHub takes a very holistic approach to diversity and inclusion by aligning it across this entire business strategy. I was excited to hear that it's embedded in everything. It's people, platform, philanthropy, and its policy efforts. So after explaining this, she asked me the all-important question. So Demetris, tell me why you want to join GitHub. Now, everybody knows that this question is coming, but in that moment, after I had just heard of a platform that back then had 50 million developers on it, now over 80 million developers, I immediately said, I want to join GitHub because I want to open source diversity and inclusion. I had to humbly say that it was a great answer because I'm here. So open sourcing diversity and inclusion. What does that mean? To find out, I just started talking to as many people across the open source ecosystem that I could. Many of you who are listening to me now. During the course of those conversations, there were several themes that started to emerge. One, inclusion happens at the community level. When a new person comes into open source, their first few interactions within a community really influences whether they feel welcome and are here for life, or if they have some negative interactions. They come in, they take a look, and they leave, sometimes for good. The second thing was that it's that maintainer or community leader that sets the tone for inclusion within a community. Think about it like this. In an organization, you can create all of the diversity and inclusion programs that you want, but inclusion comes down to those day-to-day interactions that happens within a team. And often what's happening in a team is based on the culture that that manager has set. So how you think about that manager and that relationship of that manager to the team, that's the same relationship that a community leader or maintainer has to its community. Now, all of the maintainers that I spoke to, they said there is no shortage of resources. There were plenty of trainings, articles, podcasts, events, conferences, checklists, you name it, they said they had it. So if resources were the issue, what's really going on? Now, this is where the conversation started to get a bit interesting, and they started to differentiate. Maintainers of smaller communities or those that are not well-resourced, they said they had the resources, meaning those trainings that I talked about, and completely understood the importance of having an inclusive culture, but there were these competing priorities. They didn't have the time or bandwidth to focus on the culture as much as they knew that they should. You see, when you are first starting a community, you need as many people into your community contributing to your code as possible. And you need them no matter who they are or where they are. So it's all about getting what maintainer said, hands on the keyboard. So then we started talking to maintainers of larger communities. And what they shared with us is, Demetris, you're right. We have the resources, we have the time, and we have the bandwidth, but there's this definite tipping point where a community becomes too large to easily influence the culture. So you see, the later you start, the more difficult it is. So now you have these two tensions. You really need to focus on inclusion from the very beginning, which is when you least have the time to actually focus on it. But one thing that was consistent, no matter who we talk to or the size of their community, there are still some significant barriers to access and open source, especially for those from underrepresented or historically excluded backgrounds. So you see, we can build the most inclusive community ever, but if that gate is still so high that no one can get to those communities, Now, what are we doing? So we have to make sure that we don't fall into that myth of if we build it, they will come. So after all of those conversations and with the goal to address the themes from those conversations, we are pleased to announce that we've launched All In, a community dedicated to open sourcing, diversity, equity, and inclusion. The community is set up to advance DEI the open source way, openly, transparently, and equally important in collaboration with all of you. During that first year, we partnered with the Linux Foundation to release the open source DEI survey. We completed a maintainers listening tour, and we also completed a 12-month pilot focused on students. That survey is amazing. You have to go to our website, allinopensource.org. It is 64 pages of data, insights, and solutions that can really give you a picture of the state of DEI in open source. But for this moment, I want to focus on a few of the findings. 82%, you read that right, 82% of survey respondents agree with the statement, I feel welcome in open source. That's great, right? I'm telling you, any company would be so happy to have an 82% favorability rating on their engagement survey. I'm telling you, they would be having parties, popping bottles, raining confetti. It would be the works. And many, unfortunately, would stop there. 82%, that's great. Let's celebrate, move on. But that's not the purpose of diversity, equity, and inclusion. We give voice to those that aren't in the majority. That 18%, or 1 in almost 5 of survey respondents who did not agree with this statement, they do not feel welcome in open source. Who are they? What are their stories? How can we alleviate some of the challenges that they are facing or some of the negative behavior that they may be experiencing? We need to hear the voices of the 25% of people with disabilities who do not feel welcome in open source, the 26% of women, or 29% of persons of color in North America, or the staggering 38% of non-binary and third gender contributors who do not feel welcome in open source. Because it's those stories, those challenges, that behavior that may be keeping some folks who may want to participate in open source from even attempting. That's where the real conversation around lowering barriers to entry, providing access to and pathways to success, that's where the conversation starts. So what were they saying? Those experiences included, if I don't have the technical skills and knowledge, that I'm not welcome to participate. Someone shared a comment that if I'm not white, male, highly educated, wealthy, then my voice isn't heard or my contributions aren't valued and I don't feel welcome. When I do try to participate, my contributions are constantly rejected or I'm just flat out ignored. Maintainers, your contributors feel invisible when there is a lack of response. They just don't feel valued. There were lots of comments around written and spoken language, microaggressions, being subjected to stereotypes. 46% of survey respondents said that they have experienced language that has made them uncomfortable. So yes, 82% may say that they agree with the statement that they feel welcome, but we have some work to do. We have to get to a place where inclusion is not the exception. It's the norm. Community hospitality is prioritized. Proper triage processes and amazing documentation where people with all experience levels know how to contribute in a meaningful way. Unconscious bias training for maintainers, accessibility audits and compliance, enforced codes of conduct, consistent inclusive language scans. These things have to become the norm in open source and not the exception. So yes, we are going to build it. And we are also going to address the barriers to participation. And then, and only then, will we be able to have the vibrant diversity within open source that reflects the society in which we all live and serve. So all of those things that I just mentioned, we are going to include them in All In for maintainers, but we wanted to take a step back and apply the process that we do at GitHub. We wanted to build this program with maintainers and not for maintainers. So we conducted a maintainers listening tour, which was a series of focus groups, individual interviews, and an asynchronous online process for maintainers to provide us feedback on what's working, what's not working, what additional resources they need, and what they want to see in a program like All In for maintainers. We are just using the insights of that in our soon to launch All In for maintainers. But we also just completed our 12-month pilot of All In for students. And let me tell you, those students are amazing. During the program, they completed an online open source one-on-one education curriculum. They also receive career development content focused on things that will help them succeed, not only in a corporate environment, but also in the tech environment. They completed a 12-week technical open source project with Major League Hacking. The goal was to get these students exposure and the skills that they needed to participate in an internship program with one of our corporate partners. We were intentional about the schools that we chose to participate. Most of them were historically Black colleges and universities, or HBCUs. We went to the schools that typically do not show up on anyone's recruitment radar. And we were intentional about the students who were a part of this program as well. GPA is an indicator, but is not the only indicator of a student's aptitude for success. The students we wanted in this program are those that life has happened. The students in this program, you have some that were commuting 2 hours to school each way every single day because they couldn't afford to live on campus, or who may be a caregiver, especially during the pandemic. Parents, those who may have to work full-time to pay for school. They may have been full-time military or active duty reserves, or even athletes who couldn't even participate in an internship because they trained during the summer. All of these things that may have had an impact on their GPA. But what was in common for all of the students, they are hardworking, dedicated, motivated students who just needed a shot. That door opened just a little bit. What I've just described, those are the students of All In. And these are the amazing and really important organizations that said that we're all in for them. Everyone, this is what it looks like when we open source diversity and inclusion. And just so you know, I asked our amazing design team at GitHub, and they said there is plenty of space for more logos. And I can't wait until we have a running list of names from people and organizations all over the world who have pledged to be all in as well. But more importantly, when you open source diversity and inclusion, here's what we found. This is what the next generations of leaders in open source start to look like. I am so very proud to report that every single student, yes, 100% of them, receive a summer internship experience with a corporate partner or a community. And I am so thrilled to learn about many of them. Every day I'm getting emails where they're excitedly sharing with me that they've been invited to come back next summer for another internship. Or even for those that are now seniors in the program, they've received full-time offers based on the work that they did in All In and their internship experience. So you've heard about the survey, the listening tour, the program for students and maintainers, but let me be very clear. All In is not a program. It's a community. And a community is made up of dedicated people who are willing to collaborate and contribute. In other words, it's made up of all of you, all of us. And we need each and every one of you to join. So join us. Let's get to work. Go to the All In landing page, www.allinopensource.org. Learn more about the program through our repo. Join the community. If your company or your community might be interested in participating and providing opportunities for students, let us know. And yes, we would love any financial support from organizations or individuals. Okay, you have the why, you have the mission, you have the charge. Now let's open source diversity and inclusion. Thank you.